This is the book I just released. It's Special Welfare, Social Warfare, Adolescence to Adulthood, a guidebook. So I tell the story in here. There came a time where in my life, drugs and alcohol overwhelmed me. And what occurred was a story that is shared in here. It started at 19 when I went in the military. I went in to be a hospital corpsman into the Navy, and I wanted to leave home because my family did not appreciate the drug use that I at that time was just smoking marijuana. So what I did was I went down to the Naval Recruiter, and this is in 1979 when it's literally nobody wants to enter into the military. And what I did was enlist. To make a long story short, I found out that in the third week of boot camp, you could take a screening test for becoming a Navy SEAL. And I had no idea what that was, but it sounded like a good challenge. So I took the test, passed, and ended up in Coronado, California, starting with BUD/S Class 106. The date we began was August 27th, 1979, and I graduated 6 months later on February the 29th, 1980. So, what does that mean to the storyline here? 9 years after my successful transition from BUD/S to the SEAL teams, again, 9 years later, I was discharged from SEAL Team 1 for drug use, and it was horrible. It wasn't, being a SEAL wasn't just a job or a title, it was my identity. And at that stage, there was zero tolerance, and the military was not going to take me back. So I had to figure out how to live life other than a Navy SEAL without the use of drugs and alcohol. And I was severely addicted to crystal meth, marijuana, Budweiser, Jack Daniels, and Skull Uncut Wintergreen. I went to a 90-day recovery facility, Project 90, and in that 90 days, I was able to break the physical addiction to drugs and alcohol, but I by no means had any idea of how to live life. It wasn't going well. I couldn't figure it out. So I decided where I would put myself in the environment where I could view those individuals that were at my age right now, presently, and at that time I was 29, where I could watch them who had the same issues that I had with drugs and alcohol. So I started as an overnight counselor at a drug and alcohol recovery facility for adolescents 13 to 17 years old, all of them court appointed. It was called Daytop Village. And in the next 4 years, I went there for the sole purpose of having to find a way to figure out how to live life. I did not go there to help kids. That was just the job. Well, it turned out to be more than a job. And at the end of the 4 years, I was able to not only maintain my sobriety, but I found the golden key that I believe is part of recovery, and that is to find purpose and meaning in life, something that is worth you giving your all for. And having been so helped and so guided and so much kindness through the adolescents that I was working with, I decided that I was going to commit my life to being there for youth for as they were there for me. Now, the issue at that time was I had no education, and they were not going to give me a caseload. No matter how good you are, without a credential, you're never going to get to be able to have a caseload of individuals, and that was all right. I accepted that. So I ended up leaving Daytop Village, and I took the next job, again, still wanting to work with youth. I became a unit director at a Boys and Girls Club in Paradise Valley, which is South San Francisco, California. I started there as a unit director with 59 youth 4 years later, I had 440 youth, all ages, and it was really what helped me understand that it wasn't just a job. I had a talent for working with youth. I had learned the rules that they taught me, that if you say something, you got to follow through with it. If you're going to, none of them wanted to be judged, and I didn't want to be judged. So again, that between the two jobs, Adolescent Recovery Facility, Boys and Girls Club, I was ready to take the next step in being there for the youth in the form of attaining knowledge and insight. Because I'm all on board for committing my life to the betterment of youth. And at that stage, it required an education. So after the 8 years, I went back to school and ended up getting a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. I then got licensed and board certified as a clinical social worker. And the reason for that was I did not want some young person to come to me with an issue, and they were coming to me because I had earned their trust and not have an answer for that. So I attained all the credentials that made it so that I had a serious foundation on how to work with youth if we want to make them better. So with that offered as this portion, I'm going to do this segmented. This here tells the story at the beginning, what happened to me, why I chose youth, what the youth did for me, and what I was willing to do back so that I could be there for them as they had been there for me. And that was the need for an education, which I attained. The next piece that we come to is the end of the book. The end of the book is, what is it that today's youth are missing from working with them for the last 35 years? This is what I've come to understand that is not in place. It's remiss. We do not have a rite of passage. Now, early in my life, I was a member of the White Indian Guides. That was no longer, it was a YMCA program, and it was wonderful. You got to be an Indian and all of that. And I transitioned to that, becoming a Boy Scout. And then anybody that's ever been in the military goes through their boot camp. And in that boot camp, you are given a rite of passage. You are being transitioned from a world of being young and foolish, including being a civilian young and foolish individual, to becoming a military, what the military needs in their enlisted and officer corps, the ability for you to be there for your country. You're part of something bigger, and in that rite of passage, you are taught and educated with drill instructors as to what it is that is right action and incorrect action. And that was on top of that, for me, I got the opportunity to go to BUDS, which is Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, and of which on the 29th of February, 1980, I graduated, and I shared 9 years later being discharged from SEAL Team 1 as an addict for drug use, and then proceeding into working with youth, being educated by youth, going back to academia and understanding the knowledge that was presented there, and then considering the rite of passage as being the thing that is missing today. We leave our youth to their own good luck, swift kick in the shorts, send them on their way and say, I hope you can figure it out. And that is not always how it's been. There has always been a transition. The way of the warrior. In mythology, Joseph Campbell spoke of it. He was explaining that cultures around the world that had no communications with one another, ended up doing the same thing in teaching their youth to transition from young person to adult. And we don't have that anymore. So what I came up with is creating what I call Honor Bound Academy. This is a one-year program. It is specific to ages 18, 19, and 20. It's at 17, I cannot deal with the parents. You as the parent have every right to tell me what I need to do with your 17-year-old. When you turn 18, I'll listen, but I'm doing it my way. And at 21, you've begun the process of moving into the world, and perhaps you would still gain from it, but you've got a path that you're journeying on, for better or worse, and I'm going to leave you there and focus on 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So it's a one-year program that I've put together that will bring into account a curriculum. It's all about the education. What is also key is there's four pillars. One of them is a patron. I chose one of the wealthiest men in America to be the patron for an Honor Bound Academy. I also chose to work with the Native American tribes in as far as the spirituality of the Native American and how they lived life is the foundation I wish to set for all of the Honor Bound academies. Next, because of my background with Special Forces, the mentoring crew that I would bring in is various Special Forces units that are Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and having them as the instructors teaching and doing it like we were all taught, standing at your side, expecting you to do what's right, putting out the scenario and having you do it. And if you failed, and it was us that was making sure you would fail, because from failure is where character is built. It's where insight is attained. There is the opportunity that failure gives us that is misunderstood in today's society is readjusted and recorrected for in Honor Bound Academy. And the very last one, I wanted the mystery. In the world and in America today, we've lost mystery. We no longer have the things that make us wonder and awe. So I took from my extensive reading material, and in this case, J.R.R. Tolkien's Silmarillion spoke of the various mansions and fortresses that are told in the story, and imagine that as creating or building the school that is Honor Bound Academy, and have it being a fortress out of fantasy, so that every day you wake up and walk out and look and are awed with what I am going to surround you with in the form of eyes seeing what shouldn't be. And it's not a building with four walls. It's a castle. And it's those four pieces that go into creating Honor Bound Academy. All right, here we go again. This one is 5, podcast number 5, talking about the book that I wrote. This is Special Welfare, Social Warfare, Adolescence to Adulthood, a guidebook. I've spoken on the various subjects of my background as a Navy SEAL, my addiction, my recovery, my immersion within the world of adolescents, their education in teaching me how best to be there for them, and continuing on to get the education of a bachelor's, master's license, and board certification as a social worker. Now, what else is in there is my desire to be there for today's youth in the form of an advocate. And in the book, I write about adolescent combat diplomat. And those 3 pieces are what make up myself and my past. The adolescence combat, diplomat. Adolescence is who I work with and who I work for. Diplomat is one of those credentials that I hold is a board certification as a diplomat in clinical social work. Okay, and then we come up with the final combat, and that comes from my military career. Being a Navy SEAL gave me, after graduating from BUD/S, a very specific way that I look at problems, that I look at issues, and how I am going to go about overcoming them. So I've explained various aspects, and at this point, it's why would you write a book? One of the key elements to it was I shared the nonprofit I created was Honor Bound Academy. And in that, I spent a decade trying to get funded and was unable to get the necessary funding to bring it to life. And so, having spent an inordinate amount of my own money and the knowledge and all the effort that went into creating Honor Bound Academy, I just couldn't see leaving it on the drawing board. So I decided to write a book, and I share in the book the issues today's youth are experiencing are overwhelming them from a mental health perspective. And being a clinical therapist, I see it firsthand. And from that, I created a nonprofit called Honor Bound Academy that is a rite of passage that I sensed is what is missing amongst our youth today, that transition from adolescent to adulthood, where we guide them through our taking them step by step, rather than leaving them to their own devices and trying to figure it out, and usually failing miserably. And so in the book, I tell the story about the nonprofit. I was unable to get it funded, so I share it here. If someday somebody reads it and thinks it's worthy of creation, I've explained it from A to Z, all that went into it, all of my caring, desire, wanting to have something that I could give back to youth that would help guide them is found in this book. I've worked now for decades trying to be a support to young people. And today is a time in our nation's history that we are experiencing a darkness that is overwhelming the adult population and is wreaking havoc on our young people. And it's by being there and attempting, by writing a book, sharing with you what I've seen over the past 45 years of working amongst adolescents and living amongst the adult population. We are right now getting ready to welcome into office a new president. And what is going to come of that presidency, I don't think anybody has a clue as to what is going to happen. And by its very nature, us not being able to know what's coming next, it creates some serious difficulties along the way of mental health. We, as a nation, the adult population, we're not communicating with one another. We're not sharing our thoughts. We're not willing to compromise. We are all shut down, angry, and fearful. And it's in that it is affecting our youth. Because understand this with young people. They're not looking to what we have to say to them. They're not building the way they've become on what we tell them they should do. They watch us. They're watching how we act, and they're emulating us. And the problem with that right now is the adult population is shut down, has absolutely no desire to compromise, and the youth looking at that aren't able to come to terms with their feelings, which create then anxiety, depression, and what is really horrible at this time is suicidal ideation. So, with that said, the January 20th is when President Trump will take office, and whatever's going to happen will begin on that day. What I'm attempting to do is maneuver myself into position so that I can be an advocate for a generation of youth so that I can be there for them, helping not in what I would tell them to do, but walking amongst them, sharing and showing them what can be done. That is really what a mentor is all about. And that's what I'm seeking to do is become a mentor for ages birth to 29 as they face a world right now that is coming apart. And for all of the questions and doubts that our young people have, I'm there and I'm here hoping that I can be someone you can turn to and offer you my thoughts on whatever the issues are that you're facing that are making it so difficult for you. So that's what this is. I am going to be doing a number of them, choosing various topics to explain and see if at some point you don't become comfortable with me. As a clinical therapist, I always start out with, I'm not asking you to trust me. What I'm asking for is the opportunity to earn your trust. Right now, I'm putting this out to the real world. I'm offering it to you to better come to understand me. And I want you to judge me. I want you to make me prove to you that I am valid, that I am truthful, that I am actually going to be there for you. So that is the challenge that I seek to participate in, and I seek it with you, making me better as you always have. So that's today's conversation from me to you. Thank you.